thank anybody that had to do with recommending me for this honor, and it is a great honor. I came to prep school in 1941, came back to teaching in the prep school in 1958, went into the college in 62, and taught at Saint Vincent till 2005. So I know a little wee bit about Saint Vincent. But I really appreciate this honor, and I want to thank everybody that had anything to do with it. And I think Bill Rafferty was a big impression on me. You know, we talk about it, and I talk about it other places, about what a great coach he was, one of the great coaches of the Western world. You know, if you know anything about Bill Rafferty's history, he inadvertently taught us a little bit about patriotism. He was working here at Saint Vincent, coaching in the prep and the college. He was a chemist by trade. He went to work, and for part of the day, every day, 4 or 5 days a week, for one of the big plants in Latrobe. I think Bill Rafferty taught us a little bit about community and about patriotism, about giving back. But, and you know, if any of his sons are in the audience, I would certainly tell you that one of the things that your dad taught me was you ought to give back a little bit. You ought to practice what I guess we call patriotism now. But there were any number of people like that, or people that by their decorum as St. Vincent, as teacher or coach, impressed us. And when we decided to do whatever we were doing, eventually that came back. You know, Bill Rafferty did it this way. Fenton Schonecker did it that way. Egbert Donovan and Edmund Cuneo are just two of the grandest people I've ever met. So, you know, those are the type of impressions that I have about the prep school.
First of all, I would like to thank the selecting committee, I guess it was the reunion committee, for selecting me for this award. It means a lot for me because I first taught in the prep school when I came back from school, and it was a good experience teaching the younger students in the sophomore year of Latin. And also, I had much enjoyment in helping Father Herman at that time to work with the Junior Classical League and participating and contributing to it. Another funny experience was when we had a senior picnic on the ridge. Father Julian Smith at that time was out on a raft on the water up there in the lake, and a number of us went over and took his clothes. All he was dressed in were his shorts, so we left him out there for a while. But we gave him his clothes back though. He took it in good nature. Another time was on that same picnic. We had a classmate who always came into the dormitory late, and he made noise. So the underclassmen, when we were on a picnic and they knew we would be back late at night, they went and dismantled his bed and tied it, the ends with cords. And when he came back, and he usually jumped in bed when he came back in the dark as the lights were off, the bed collapsed on him and the whole dormitory reacted. My interests, I value the ancient texts. That's why I taught the classics not only in the prep school, but also in the college and the seminary. I think that the experience at St. Vincent Prep that made a difference in my life was the fact that attending the prep and living the communal life helped me to grow through my adolescent years into manhood, which evidently resulted in my becoming a successful Benedictine monk and priest.
Some people have asked me about my prep experience. I came to the prep school as part of the diocesan program for the minor seminary. My father died when I was 11 years old, suddenly, when I was in 7th grade. My mother had 6 kids to raise. And when they came around in 8th grade asking who thought they'd like to be a priest and go study at this place called Saint Vincent, I thought, this is the greatest thing in the world. It sounded like a wonderful experience. My hand went up right away. As everyone knows, if your mother gets right into heaven if you become a priest. Unfortunately, I never became a priest. But I wound up at Saint Vincent. It wasn't the way it was described. In fact, it initially seemed to be much like a concentration camp. 2 metal lockers. We slept in one room. We washed in another room. And yet, I grew to love the environment. I never had a high school experience that could have been better. We had prefects. I had people to play with all the time. And even today, to this very day, the reason I don't smoke was because of an old monk called Father Jerome. Back then, in the prep school, smoking wasn't seen as evil as it is today. And you could smoke if your parents gave you permission. As a freshman, my father had just died of a heart attack. My mother was not giving permission to smoke. And as you know, you usually learn to smoke from your best friends. After intramural practice or whatever, the cigarette would be going around, and Father Jerome seemed to always walk in when I have the cigarette in my mouth. I spent 3 Saturdays scrubbing intramural mats. That was the punishment. Now, the next time the cigarette came around, I thought of those mats, I thought of that cigarette, and I said, no way. The prep school was that kind of environment for me. Not having a father, I had all the fathers here. Not having a lot of friends, I had all the friends I needed. I never needed to find people to play baseball, basketball, football, whatever. They were always there. I was a young man, probably destined to work in the steel mills. But because of my education in the prep school, I was able to go to college. Without getting into college, I would never be teaching here at Saint Vincent today. I have deep affection for the people who I initially described as being like a concentration camp. We didn't get to talk in the evenings. Oftentimes we had study halls where we were silent from 7 to 10 p.m. We would go to bed, sleep in the same room. My children didn't believe I lived that life in high school. They absolutely thought I was making it up. But it was the best environment I could have ever been in.
I came from a family of 6, son of a coal miner and a convert mother to Catholicism. And first day, came to St. Vincent, our parents dropped us off, my brothers were with me. And we get to the school and they take us to our locker. And all these little 13-year-olds are there, and all the freshmen started grouping together, and it was so nice. And our parents left us, and we had this excitement about going away from school for the first time. So, and all the upperclassmen were so nice, and finally all the parents left, and our group of freshmen started grouping together. And we're walking together, and all of a sudden we hear this word, frosh! And we're thinking, what the hell is a frosh? And we turn around, and then the hell began. It was a week of hell, the worst hell you can imagine. And you'd be walking down the hall, and they'd say, frosh, get down on your knees. And we'd get down on our knees, and they would pull one guy, they'd blindfold him up, and take him in the restroom. And unbeknownst to us, what they would do, they would lock us in a stall, and somebody would go in with us, and they would take peanut butter, and they would put it on the inside of their armpit here, and then what you would do, they would come in and they'd grab your arm, and they'd go like this, and they'd say, put it in your mouth, frosh. We would do that. It was an entire week of hell. These are the things you go to jail for now. But this was the first week of initiation. It was all over. And by the end of that period, right, then all of a sudden the sophomore and everybody kind of grouped together after that. That was our first initiation. And then during that period, if you kind of look at Saint Vincent from a history standpoint, you had guys coming in, 13-year-old boys that were away from home for the first time. And during that period of those 4 years in our class, we happened to have 16 by the time we graduated. You became very strong bonded with these guys. And you became confident, and at the end of that particular period, you developed a self-confidence. In my particular case, I went on and prepared me for college. Then I got lucky enough to go to Johns Hopkins. I got my master's degree, my Ph.D. there. Then I ended up doing a postdoc at the University of Maryland. And then during that period, I started my own business, a high-tech company on credit cards. These were the kind of things Saint Vincent Prep prepared you for, as well as the college too.
I'm extremely honored by the award bestowed upon me this evening. Words, however, cannot express what it means to me. So a sincere, heartfelt thanks will have to suffice. What I would like to say this evening, however, is that all prepsters should feel a special pride at having earned a place at the table in this most exclusive of all fraternities, the prep. Earned, yes, first by passing a competitive entrance exam, then by surviving not only the prep's rigorous academic program, but also its demanding order of the day that only 1,250 plus years of Benedictine monastery school tradition can impose on a 20th century young men. And finally, graduating to be entitled forever afterwards to the distinctive honor of being a prepster. Special, yes, because prepsters play a unique role in the Benedictine monastery school tradition. What is unique about the prep and prepsters, however, is that St. Vincent may be the very last such Benedictine monastery school that was opened anywhere. And prepsters may be the last surviving graduates of any such Benedictine monastery school. So we have a unique obligation to tell the tale of what a Benedictine monastery school experience was like. Our ultimate goal should be to etch all aspects of prep history indelibly into the annals of St. Vincent so that the memory of the prep will never be forgotten. To be sure, we are off to a good start with Prep Hall, Headmasters Hall, the Bill Ucker Center and the Bob Carey Center, all highly visible at the hub of campus activities. And they serve as an excellent example of what can be accomplished by prepsters in consort with the Benedictines at St. Vincent. Time being of the essence, however, there is no time to waste. And so I'll close by paraphrasing an exhortation of Jim Seabold made a few years ago. The prep, may the memory of the prep last forever. But there is a caveat, and that is that in order to do so, each and every one of us prepsters needs to help in our own way to make this happen. And when that is accomplished, that will be the ultimate prep award that all prepsters can share in equally and will serve to be a fitting legacy from prepsters to future generations. Thank you.
My years at the prep have been very influential in my life, but I like to mention two men especially that were role models for my career choices. And I've been a football coach, high school football coach, for 43 years. And there was an incident, I was a sophomore here at St. Vincent's, that kind of geared how I treated all my football players for all those years. And I was a sophomore, injured my wrist, and neither Stan or Abel told me I should go get an x-ray. So when I came back from Latrobe, I was standing on the sidelines. The team went out for afternoon practice, and I was kind of feeling sorry for myself. And Father Pius came over. He put his arm around my shoulder and said, "Bauer, how'd it go?" So first, I didn't even think he knew my name. But I realized then that a good coach has to treat all of his players, whether they're the superstar, whether they're third string sophomores, exactly the same. And I told Father, I said, well, they said it wasn't broken, but I have to lay off of it for 2 or 3 days. And he said, well, what did they say about your legs? And I said, Father, they didn't say anything about my legs. He said, well, then go get your shoes and start running the hill. Lesson number 2. And I try to emphasize this to every football player I ever met. Football and life is tough. And you can't let little setbacks stop you. You have to keep working through it if you're ever going to meet your goals. Father Pius taught me that lesson, and I hope I carried that lesson on to the thousands of football players I met over the last 4 decades. I also was a high school math teacher for 35 years before I retired. The first year, my principal says, what course would you rather teach? Algebra, geometry, maybe calculus? Now, I thought back to my prep years of what math course was actually the one that was most influential in my life, which one I thought was most important, and what math teacher did I most want to be like? There's no question. Geometry with Father Jerome. And I emphasize this with all my students. I never carried a pretzel. I never ever said, oh, Dad, let me see your copybook. But I emphasized them like he emphasized to me. You got to learn how to do problems, and you got to learn how to do proofs. Whether you become an engineer, whether you become a attorney, those are the important things. That will be the most important course you've ever had. I taught that lesson. I hope I got through to him the same way Father Jerome got through to me. And there's one person I'd like to thank, because I get the invitation to the prep reunion weekend every year, and I put it off a lot of times because there's always a football conference or a football clinic or football conditioning. But a couple years ago, I got a phone call. I looked at caller ID, and it said Derry, Pennsylvania. I think to myself, the only person I know in Derry, Pennsylvania is Bob Kasperick. So I answer the phone. Cass says, Bauer, get your sorry butt to Saint Vincent this year. No excuses this year. And I did. And I want to thank Bob, because every time I carried the football, it was always Bob leading me through, or Johnny Anderson, or the Raleigh brothers. And I said, I better follow Bob's lead this one more time. And I thank him very much, because I found that coming back to reunions was a very important aspect of my life. Thank you very much.
May I take this opportunity to thank those responsible for my receiving this prep award. I'm indeed honored and grateful. Permit me to go back prior to my coming to St. Vincent on September the 11th, 1949. Before that time, I grew up to know and appreciate 4 Benedictine monks of the Archabbey, who I considered my role models. Monks who I would like to name now. Father Gilbert Straub, my family friend and my predecessor. Father Linus Brugger, my pastor of Most Holy Sacrament Church in Greensburg, and a real prince, often called a prince. His assistant, Father Marcian Cornelius, who was a great priest and indeed a great friend. And lastly, Father Constantine Zek, who was my music teacher and who encouraged me in my pursuit and love of music. These men I call my role models, introduced me to the Benedictine way of life at St. Vincent. And for them, I am most grateful. As I said earlier, I came to St. Vincent in 1949, and it was at that time that I met other Benedictines, Benedictines known to many of you, men
who were also very helpful in my pursuit of a vocation to the Benedictine way of life and to the priesthood. Men like Egbert Donovan, Ulrich Tanner, Elred Beck, Louis Silacco, Pierman Meyer, Bryant Halloran, all deceased confreres today, but men whom I lived with in my years in the monastery. I thank them too for helping me on my road to priesthood and to the Benedictine way of life. I've never regretted my decision. I've never regretted for one moment my life here at Saint Vincent. And so I take this opportunity again to thank my role models and to thank those teachers that I had over the years, those 4 years until graduation in 1953. And I accept this honor not only in their name, but in the name of my 4 role models. I accept it also in their memory. Thank you again, and may we all work to keep the spirit of the prep alive.
I'm going to talk about life in the prep. I first became aware of St. Vincent in 1936 while living in Somerset County. Father Aquinas Brinker served as chaplain at the Cruiser CCC camp, where our family attended Mass on Sundays, in the mess hall. Dad decided during that time that I would attend the prep. 4 years later, after grade 7, I made a weekend retreat, and because I had read most of Father Finn's books like Tom Playfair and Claude Lightfoot, I felt very much at home. Terms like refectory did not intimidate me, and a second retreat the following year allowed me to concur with my dad's wishes. In September of 1942, I entered the prep school and found myself making new friends and getting used to a different routine. Saturday classes and multiple study halls and wearing coat and tie did not go over too well, but I accepted. Working in the as a waiter in the seminary refectory, I had some perks. The nuns always saw that we had plenty to eat, and we missed some study hall time that way. Football was almost a requirement in the prep. 4 teams, named as diminutives of the college Bearcats, encouraged participation. Those who were not athletic became managers, cheerleaders, press club reporters, or joined the band. I began my football career as a 120-pound guard and completed it 4 years later as a 160-pound guard. Coach Rafferty was sometimes a miracle worker. Like Forrest Gump and the box of chocolates, he did not know what he was going to get until school started. As student players did not always return, in 1945 I was tapped as teacher of the new underclass linemen because there were no assistant coaches due to wartime factory jobs. He introduced me to the newbies as a good teacher, and from this observation I found my life work. Our prefects were Father Lewis and Father Christopher, Little Beaver as he was affectionately called, and they were very adept at catching smokers in Texas. Since the fire, the term Texas for the lavatories may have disappeared. Father Edmund Cuneo was headmaster who encouraged public speaking, and prep debate teams usually excelled. Father Egbert Donovan was assistant headmaster and moderator of the student council. Classes were an hour in length, and Father Ulrich had his board of education for those who dozed off in physics class. Father Austin held a mock election in civics, and we also attended a jury trial in the Greensburg courthouse. As years went by, I continued to work in the seminary dining room and also at times became a dishwasher. As a senior, I became a skabutch in the kitchen, unloaded dishpans of dirty dishes from the dumbwaiters for the nuns. Sister Ancilla made sure I got a lot to eat. As a member of the Glee Club, I became involved in the Christmas cantata, which was a joint effort with St. Xavier. We went to Greensburg on a very snowy day to sing on WHJB radio. The bus was a little light on power, as it was wartime, and repairs were sometimes tape and wire. Every male on the bus had to walk up the hills as the bus could not make it with a full load. We beat the bus to the top each time. The Glee Club also produced an operetta with St. Joseph Academy in Seton Hill every spring. This took us to Greensburg every Sunday, and it was helpful when we were campused for some infraction because we were on our own when practice ended, and usually we could catch a movie before we got back. Social life was rather restricted, but we had several seasonal dances, fall, winter, and spring, and the spring prom. In addition, St. X and St. Joe's each had at least 2 that could be attended by the prep, so all in all, it was pretty busy seasons. St. Vincent Prep gave me a great start in life, as well as many memories, lifelong friends, and the ability to adapt to a changing world.
Well, when I think back to my experience of the prep school, there are 2 classes that come to mind that I'd like to talk about a bit. The first is the freshman English class that Father Camillus Long taught. Everybody tells the dramatic stories of how Camillus would pull out a revolver, hold it to his head, shoot it, fall to the ground, and then asked students to write about what they had just seen. He was a person of drama. But I guess that my memories are memories of a course that was very demanding. The expectation was that he would give us words and we would be to write them out with the diacritical marks. I struggled identifying where the accent should be placed, whether the sound of the A was a long short or a schwa. So there was this level of analytical skill that he was asking of freshmen in high school that I experienced as being very challenging. The second course that I mentioned was Father Wilford's physics. We studied wave motion by looking at the waves in a ripple tank. So we had this little square, glass-bottomed container of water that we might generate waves from a source, and we would put in different objects and see how those waves were reflected. We would also vary the depth of the water and try to anticipate whether the waves would be faster or slower in deeper or more shallow water. I'm grateful for this award. I thank those who nominated and selected me, and I'd like to receive the award in the name of my Benedictine prep classmates of 61. So I'm thinking in particular of Tony Kirsch and Nick Koss. Tony, if you think back to those days, was the short guy with the crew cut and the white patch of hair up in this spot. If you see him now, the white patch is gone. The other thing about Tony was he was really fast. So whether halfback in a touch football game or whether it was competing in the 100-yard dash, you could always count on his speed. He's now this steady monastic confrere, steady as he was in high school, but steady now as the sub-prior of our monastery. That's the number 3 guy after the archabbot and the prior. I also think of Nick Koss, who unfortunately is not able to be with us. I had the very good fortune of spending about 8 days with him a week or so ago in Beijing. Nick, you probably know, was assigned to our priory in Taiwan right after he finished his college education here. So he has spent his time in Asia, teaching at Furen University in Taipei, up until this past year when he accepted a full-time position at Peking University in Beijing. He's a scholar, and I'm just very proud of being part of this class of 61 with very special Benedictine confreres. Thank you all so very, very much. God bless.